Yours truly and a good friend of mine, Mr. Robert Pulley, has agreed to come in. Thank you, buddy.
Well, you're welcome. Friend and neighbor?
Yeah,
wow.
friend, neighbor.
You're giving me an awfully lot of credence in that.
Well, I really do appreciate you coming. You and I have been talking for weeks about, finding a day that you could come. And,
Absolutely.
And all that. I've made a list of, and I keep adding to that list of folks that would be interesting to talk to, and of course, in and about and around the community. So I thought, well, you were on my list, and I'm glad you made it in this morning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I got out of prison yesterday, so I was able to get in here this morning.
You got out yesterday?
Yes.
Well, I did. My daughter sent me a photograph through text messages of me and you.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know from what year it was. It's probably 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know, but we were sitting together at the fair eating. And
I remember.
do you remember that?
I remember that. Yes,
I'd kind of forgotten
do.
about it, but evidently my daughter had that picture somehow or another, and she sent that to me because I told her, you were coming.
Uh-huh.
And so she sent that to me, and I started to post it, and I thought better of it. So I'm just.
Well, I wasn't much to look at.
Me neither, but
Yeah.
me neither. Well, listen, I don't know if you've listened to this show or not yet, but you probably will now that you're going to be famous.
Very famous?
Yes, you'll be very famous.
Wow.
You're already famous.
No,
You're
okay.
famous.
Well, great.
Already famous. Well, listen, I wanted to ask you. You and I have known each other. I don't know how many years. Probably my first remembrance of you is back when I first started in the real estate business with Steve Williams.
Uh-huh.
And here's a little memory that sticks out, and you'll think this is funny.
Okay.
I remember you coming in for some reason. I don't know what was going on, but you came to the real estate office, and this might not have been the first meeting that I saw you, but anyways, early on in me knowing you. And you had a clipboard in your hand, and it had a to-do list. And it was in big bold letters. It had the top to-do list, or today's to-do list, or whatever, and had this whole list of things on it. And I remember asking you about that because I'd never seen anybody carrying a clipboard with a to-do list. And he was like, well, this is how I know what to do every day. And so that has stuck with me. And since then, I've made myself several to-do lists. So you were at least a little bit of an influence on me getting things done. How about that?
Well, you know what? It's, surprisingly, that is an effective way
is
to
a very
do things.
effective
A
way.
lot of times, even today, I'll have a little scratch pad on my bar.
Yeah.
And I'll write down things. I might even be laying in bed at night and says, I really need to get this done today. And I'll jump up out of bed, go in there and write it down. Then I go back and I don't have to worry about it while I'm sleeping.
Well, that's very effective. It really, really is. And I have made things I want to accomplish list that have been way long, things I want to do. Mm-hmm. And some of them are dream things, that you think you may never do. But I've gone back and found them even after I'd kind of forgot about the list. Well, I did do that. And for some reason, it's like if you write it down, you may actually accomplish it.
That's sometimes it's called synchronicity.
Is that what that is? Oh, Lord.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to put that into my book of words.
There you go.
Put that in my book of words.
Or serendipitous moments.
Oh, don't do that to me. I'm going to have to. On the wake up show that I do here from 6 to 8, we have word of the day.
Uh-huh.
Our word of the day today was nepotism.
Nepotism.
Yeah, nepotism.
Okay.
Yeah, Lonnie Box thought that was the worship of Neptune, but but no, that's not it. But hey, I wanted to ask you to get to you, and the reason that I have you here today is to find out more about you. And,
okay.
And here's what I'd like to know. I've known you for I guess since the early '80s or mid '80s at least.
Uh-huh.
And what I'd like to know is what was boyhood like? What was childhood like for Robert Pulley? I'd like to know about your family, your mom and dad, how you grew up, where you grew up. I want to know a little bit about that.
All right.
How about that?
How about we just start there?
I pulled that off on you, didn't I?
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a
Because
really
you grew up
profound question.
You grew up in Wayne County, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Well, my life first began. My mother and dad got married in September of 1948.
1948. Okay.
Yeah, and he was working, developing were climbing poles as they were putting electricity in the southeast. And he met and married my mother based on mutual friends. And
Now,
matter of fact,
where were they?
Oh, they were in Waynesboro.
They were in Waynesboro.
They were in Waynesboro. And in July the 24th, 1949, my dad was in Mississippi working on climbing poles and all that stuff, and my mother was at her mother's house having a little bouncing baby boy, Robert Pulley.
Okay. Now, are you there first?
So I was the very first one of the family, and I'm sure it was a wild experience for my mother having her first child.
Yeah.
And then not only after that, a little over 6.5 years later, there were 5 of us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's about a little over 6.5 years between me and my youngest sister.
Oh, how about that? So a house full of little ones.
Oh, there was a house full of little ones, and I'm sure Mother and Dad was pretty shocked about life during that period of time. I do remember as a small child, probably right after my last sister was born, we finally got some electricity into our house. And I remember looking up to the ceiling when they finally turned that first light bulb on, and I was looking, wow.
So you would have been about 6, 7, 8 years old?
I'd have been about 6, 7, 8 years old when we finally got electricity in our house. And then probably a couple of years later, guess what?
A TV?
No.
No?
We had a restroom.
Oh,
yeah.
Bathroom. A real toilet.
We didn't have to go out in the wintertime and trounce that little path all the way back over to the toilet. So in Wayne County in the early 50s, it's just about like all rural Tennessee and Kentucky and Alabama areas. There, that was the age of the baby boomers as we continued to go through a transition period of after the war and the good times started rolling.
Yeah, it was national prosperity that just kept rolling.
Absolutely.
But not so much for Wayne County.
No, well, we are the blunt of a lot of stories.
That's not disparaging to Wayne County, but Wayne County is very rural.
Oh, it's very rural,
and it still is.
Yeah,
it still is, and so there's just not And they like it that way. We like it that way. Yeah. I moved out close to Wayne County. As a matter of fact, I'm not too far.
Matter of fact, my little cabin where I live right now is in Wayne County.
Yeah.
Out near the Natchez Trace.
Yeah, I know where it is. Yeah. Well, good deal. So you grew up in now. What was life like as a young boy and a teenager? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's most of my memories growing up during that period of time was. My social life was basically with my mother and dad's families.
Yeah.
We didn't have a TV, so when we visited, we always visited on weekends, and we'd either go to my mother and dad's family, who
now were they native Wayne Countyans?
Oh yeah, both were native Wayne Countyans. And, I think Dad had 8 or 9 brothers and sisters.
Oh wow!
And then my mother had 7 brothers and sisters. So
the Pulley name is well rooted in Wayne County.
Well, they're in jail and everywhere else. I'm sure. I don't know.
We always joke about her. Today is Ancestry Day, as a matter of fact.
Oh, is it?
So yeah, we're talking about it. So.
Well, everybody accused me of in Wayne County, our family tree just had one root system and one limb coming out. We've always heard of that, but on my dad's side was mostly Devers and Pulleys and Woods, and on my mother's side were Kellys and Davises and all that kind of stuff.
So were they farming community too?
It was a farming community. Now, on my dad's side, my father and his wife, they were sharecroppers.
Yeah.
I mean, they really never had a home or owned their own home until I think maybe about the time I was born. Then they finally got a little bit of a stake in a piece of land and all those things. But
Right.
before then, they grew up living on somebody else's property and
Sure.
and working those things. And on my mother's side, my grandfather was a little more entrepreneurial.
Right.
He bought an old piece of property that was cut over, and next thing you know, dug stumps out of it and
Yeah.
put a little corn patch in, put a barn in, and he was a blacksmith too. So so he kind of traded a little bit, but
Sure.
neither one of our families had any money.
Like so many folks.
Yeah, it's
in our
just
area.
As a matter of fact, my dad says, they talked about the Depression in the late 20s and early 30s. We didn't know that there was a depression.
Yeah, everybody was in the
we
same
didn't-
boat.
Yeah, we didn't have anything, and we didn't know that.
Nobody else did either.
that we didn't know that anybody had money.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way it was.
Well, yeah.
I know. I will tell you one of the stories that my dad's father said he finally got a job in the Roosevelt era. The New Deal. It was during the WPA.
Yeah, the WPA.
And all that. So he
Yeah.
got a job helping pour concrete on Highway 64 from Lawrenceburg all the way to Savannah. So that's,
Oh, wow.
But he always said, I never really figured that out. We always called it we pedal around because they never really made us work hard.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, what about school? Now, did you you begin to grow up enough to go to school, and what was school like?
Oh, school, to me, it was good. Now, the first couple of years, I lived fairly close to the Waynesboro Elementary School. We lived across Green River, or the Little Creek,
Yep.
over in a hollow. So I was able, even, here I am, 6, 7 years old, and I'm walking to school. Now, people
Yeah.
talk about walking to school,
Yeah.
uphill both ways and all that. Well, it wasn't but about a quarter of a mile from my house.
Yeah.
And we always crossed a little swinging bridge to get over to the school. So, it was fun. I mean, because all of a sudden, I'm able to get out and I'm able to see more people than just my family.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I enjoyed.
So you enjoyed school.
I enjoyed school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good deal.
it was a good deal for me.
Now, so you went to Wayne County.
Wayne County Elementary, and
then Wayne County High
Wayne
School?
County High School. Graduated in 1967.
That's what I was going to ask you. 67 graduate.
Yeah.
Now, what'd you do from there?
Well, I was going to go to Falls Business. I did go to Falls Business College, and that was about the time that people were starting to program these little computers, and I thought, well, I believe I'll just go to school and learn how to do computers and become a real entrepreneur and work in the offices.
Yeah.
And but that didn't work out because I hated it. I found out that I'm not a real technical person. I don't like anything that I got to use my hands to do any work. So my aunt, while I was going to school up there, Ruby Dunnigan in Waynesboro, finally called my dad and says, "Hey, there's a job in trucking up here that they're looking for somebody that can type and cut freight bills for a trucking company. Do you think Robert would be interested?" Well, at the time, I was doing part-time work as a shoe salesman for Hill's Shoe Company, and I hated that with a
Now,
passion.
where was this?
In Nashville.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in.
So you weren't in Waynesboro.
No, Falls Business College was in Nashville.
Okay.
Stayed at the YMCA.
Okay.
And always caught a bus back and forth to my work.
So
and-
this was
and
what, 69,
That
70?
would have been the late 1967, early 1968.
Okay.
Yeah. So that started my career in trucking.
That's where I wanted to head to because
Yeah.
I wanted to figure out how you got to get to trucking.
Yeah.
So tell me about that job, that early job.
Okay, well, that early job, it was one of those things to where I didn't know anything about trucking, so they would bring the invoices and stuff in, and we would type up freight bills that would have the charges and stuff on it for them to deliver the bills. And so I started doing that, and I thought, and I'm going to school, and after I graduated, I said, I think I like this trucking pretty good.
So you like what, 18, 19,
I was
20?
Yeah, I was 18.
Okay.
And
wow.
I noticed that, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm cutting freight bills, and I'm making about $1.25 an hour. And there's a guy in this next office over here that's called a rate clerk, and everybody wanted to, he was a mysterious type guy because he could always put the charges on the bills that told everybody how to, what the cost is of the freight.
Yeah.
So one day I was sitting at a bus stop getting ready to catch the bus to go back over to the YMCA, and the rate clerk pulls up beside me. He was an older guy, really crusty guy, probably about 60 years old, and he said, "Son, where you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to catch a bus and go down to the YMCA." And he said, "Well, I'll go right there close to it. I'll take you over there." So I started developing a little bit of relationship with him, and I would wait after I got through and with my work, and I would watch him and I would ask questions.
There you go.
And the next thing you know, he's teaching me how to rate freight bills, how to put the charges on the freight bills.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, this is pretty neat. Well, one afternoon, I came in to start typing my freight bills, and there was all kinds of chaos going on. And the general manager of the trucking company was running around, and I asked one of the ladies in there, I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Our rate clerk, Mr. Brinkley, he's ended up with appendicitis, and he's going to be out for 3 weeks. And we don't have anybody who can rate freight bills." and said, "We've called every other trucking company in town to see if anybody might be able to help us part-time until we can get him back in here." And I was sitting there, and I said, "Well, I can rate." And our general manager said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, he taught me how to do this." So the next thing you know, he says, "Well, go in there and start."
Go in there and get at it.
And I did, and for 3 weeks, I did those things, and they saved all those bills while I was in there, because they were kind of scared that I didn't know what to do.
Sure.
When he come back, all of them were correct.
Attaboy.
And the next thing you know, they said, "Well, wait a minute. You can rate, and our largest customer is in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. I work for a company called Pulaski Highway Express."
Pulaski Highway Express. Okay.
And they had an office in Lawrenceburg, and their largest account was Murray, Ohio
I remember the
Manufacturing
PHE.
Company. PHE.
Yeah.
And so they said, "What if we start a rate department in Lawrenceburg, and we transfer you down there so that we can get the charges on the bills a day quicker, and we can get our receivables to turn a little quicker." So not only that, I was transferred from Nashville out of Falls Business College to Lawrenceburg. It's not throwing me in the briar patch. Here I am, a big man down now, at like 19.
19, and you started,
I-
so they put you down here.
They put me
now,
down
where
here.
were you located here?
It's called the old PHE Plaza now. It's where I think it's United Countries over there, and the liquor store there on Weekly Creek Road between the railroad tracks.
So right there at the railroad tracks.
Right there at the railroad tracks on the left. That
Okay.
was the old Pulaski Highway Express trucking terminal.
Okay. All right. That might
And
have been,
that's where I was.
Okay. So how long did that last? You were there for.
Well, that lasted for about 6 or 7 months.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's all. And then all of a sudden, I get this letter in the mail, and it was from the U.S. Defense Department or something.
Who are them people?
Those were people. The Vietnam War was going on about that time, and they said, "Don't you think it's time you get drafted?" And I'm thinking, man, You mean I gotta go to the Army? Well, the people who owned the company at the time got me a 6-month deferment because they didn't have anybody that could take my place. So they were able to do that. And then I was drafted into the Army.
So I don't think I knew that about you.
Oh, you didn't?
I don't think I knew that you went in the military.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I went to Fort Campbell, then to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and then to Long Bend, Vietnam.
No. Oh, really? So you get to go to Vietnam?
Yeah, the first
I
time.
say got to go.
Well,
had to go.
The first time I was ever on an airplane
Yeah.
in my entire life.
Yeah.
I remember I was from Wayne County.
Yeah.
I flew from Nashville, Tennessee, to Oakland, California, to Anchorage, Alaska, to Tokyo, Japan, to Long Bend, Vietnam.
Lordy help. How long did that
A lot longer than I wanted it to. And I'm sitting there thinking.
And how old were you then?
I would have been, well, I was getting ready to turn 20, I think.
I was going to say,
I
you're
was
probably
about
around 20, 20 years
somewhere
old.
close to that.
Wow.
Spent 14 months over there.
Wow.
And
Well-
but then when I got back, they gave me my old job back.
That's pretty awesome. Well, a belated thank you, but thank you for your service.
Well,
How about that?
well,
How about that?
you're
I had no
welcome.
idea.
You didn't.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that
Okay.
about you.
No.
And of course, you know, a lot of people of your generation and people who did serve don't talk about it a lot.
No, I don't. You know, it's just one of those things. You know,
They did what they had to do. You did what you had to do.
I did what I had to do. It was a great experience.
Now, what did you do in?
I was a military policeman.
Oh, really? An MP?
Yeah, I was an MP, and I was.
How in the world?
How
in the world?
Of
You did-
all the people. Well, one of the things that they wanted to make sure is as a military policeman, they wanted you to be about at least 6 foot tall and certain things.
So you were
And
tall.
So I was
Yeah.
tall enough, and I ended up
Probably
doing-
in pretty good shape.
Well, yeah, at the time, I didn't have this big belly and all this other kind of stuff on me. So, you know, I was in pretty good shape. And, you know, I learned a lot. One of the things that I did learn is we live in a great big world.
Oh,
And Wayne County is not the whole world.
yeah,
Everything doesn't,
yeah.
you know, the sun doesn't just shine and rise and sit in Wayne County. There are more people out there, you know.
So it
than-
opened up the
and a
world to
lot-
you.
Oh,
It opened up the world to
well,
you, didn't it?
not only that, I was able to, you know, you're learning different cultures from different people throughout the U.S.
Yeah.
because you're thrust in there with all of these other people who don't even think the same way you do. They don't even talk the same way you do.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and not
That's
only
an
that.
eye-opening experience
Oh, it
for a
was
young
very
man.
eye-opening.
Yeah.
And then you go in there, and then the next thing you know, after you've learned all this, you go to a different culture, and people don't even look like you.
Yeah, they're different all the way around.
Oh yeah, and they have their whole lives are totally different than yours.
Yeah, yeah. That's a big eye-opening
Yeah.
experience for.
So
for
if
someone.
nothing else, that was a great learning experience. So
Yeah.
you know, while it just so happened I was drafted,
So
it was a great
served
thing.
for. I guess you got out in what year?
I got out in 1971.
71. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have been about 10 years old at that time.
Probably so.
I was about
yeah.
10 years old at that time. So Robert Pulley comes back to Lawrenceburg,
Yeah.
and still close ties with family in Waynesboro, Wayne County.
Absolutely. Yes. You know, I mean, it's still close ties with my brothers and sisters,
Now,
my cousins.
Let's talk about your brothers and sisters, though.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I know any of them or not.
Well, you may not. My two sisters live here in Lawrenceburg.
Okay.
LaQuita Nelson
Okay.
lives on 3rd Street, and Jane Franks, who's married to Tommy Franks, lives at the corner of 3rd and 2nd Avenue, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know, but it's
Somewhere there. Okay.
but they both live in Lawrenceburg. I've got
Okay.
a brother that lives in Parsons, who worked for the telephone company, as my father did
okay.
for about 40-something years. He
Oh, wow.
retired from the telephone company in Waynesboro, and my next oldest brother went to work for them, and he retired.
Good deal.
And my youngest brother got into the construction business and worked for Preston Carroll, and the next thing you know, he's out in Louisiana, and he moved from being a supervisor with a construction company to owning his own, and has been extremely successful in that business. He has since sold his company to his son, but he still lives in Louisiana.
Well, good for them. Good for them. So you come back to PHE. And so went right back to work.
Right back to work, and
then Murray was still rolling.
Still our largest account.
Yeah.
And about 5 years later, I had the fortunate ability to become the terminal manager.
Now, what's the difference in that?
And a rate clerk?
Yes.
The terminal manager is one who oversees all the operations of the facility there in Lawrenceburg. You would have goods that would come into the terminal and goods that would leave the terminal.
Okay.
So when we had people in our that delivered freight for us.
Yeah.
We had employees that delivered freight, and we had employees that picked up freight from Murray, Union Carbide, M-Fine, all of those places, and
right.
And we consolidated it there at the terminal, and then shipped it off to Nashville and to Memphis.
Okay, so you basically became the manager of this
hub in this area, and
now how big was PHE?
PHE at the time probably was a small LTL carrier, so it probably was doing maybe $4 or $5 million in revenue at the time.
Well, I mean, how many locations?
Okay, they had locations in Lawrenceburg, Pulaski, Florence, Alabama, Nashville, Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, and Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
Wow.
During that time, the transportation industry was regulated. You only had specific routes. Like in our case, we could only go from Lawrenceburg to Nashville and Memphis, and then interline with other trucking companies who had routes into Memphis that would take the bicycles, lawnmowers, any other things that we had, and take them to their destinations and deliver.
Well, let's talk about. I'm getting off subject just a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
But you mentioned something that just kind of caught my attention.
Okay.
The regulated trucking.
Right.
It was regulated.
Oh, it was regulated.
And then, but later, Ronald Reagan deregulated. Or was it before that?
It happened in 1980. Before that, you had the Public Service Commission that regulated all intrastate rights. We could not get off the road system from Lawrenceburg to Nashville. We only had a specific way that we could go. The same way from Lawrenceburg to Memphis, we could only go Highway 64. We couldn't deviate from that.
Okay.
So
that's what regulation means. I mean,
that's what regulation. It meant that all the routes for all trucking companies were regulated. And so that's how they control the logistics within the systems.
Okay.
And then in 1980, the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 says we're going to strip all of these regulations out, and everybody can go everywhere. Unfortunately, what happened is a small carrier like Pulaski Highway Express, who had controlled rights between Nashville and Memphis, all of a sudden lost those. And some of these carriers they were giving freight to in Nashville and Memphis started coming in and picking up their own things. So the small company, Pulaski Highway Express, ended up declaring bankruptcy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I lost my job.
Well, that would happen.
In 1980, I'm sitting there, married, had a small child who was 2 and 1 that had just been born.
Oh, wow.
And I had no job. So I ended up going into business with a gentleman called Tanksley Foster, and we started a small trucking company, similar to the one Pulaski Highway Express had. And we kept it for about 4 years. And then I sold my part out from him and started a truckload company.
You started a trucking company here in Lawrenceburg.
Right, Southland Express.
Southland, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember the trucking
How
company.
all that happened, huh? Yeah. And I had a business partner, Steve Cohn.
Yep.
One of the greatest partners you could ever ask for.
I remember you guys having, what was it, Southland
Express.
Southland Express. All right. Okay. All right. And so that was a ground up start up from you guys.
Oh yeah, start up from zero. No revenues, no trucks, no offices, no nothing.
So how in the world would you launch that?
Well, fortunately for me during the time is I had begun to be very active in our community.
Yeah.
Involved in the chamber, involved in civic organizations, and developed relationships. You know, a lot of my friends were in other industries, and
Right.
and I had developed a really good relationship with our financial community.
Yeah.
And so when I went to try to get money to start this trucking company, fortunately, I mean, I got 100% loans.
Yeah. So you were able to,
which is unheard of now. you
oh
know.
yeah. But you had some people that had some faith in you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just I have been blessed my
And-
whole
but
life.
it was a little bit different then too. The bankers and financial institutions had a little more freedom as to what they could do. So you partnered up with Cone,
Steve Cohn.
Steve Cone, and who did you say?
I didn't have another partner, just Steve.
Okay, well you mentioned.
Tanksley Foster with the first trucking company I
Yes, okay.
was involved. Then I sold my part out to him.
Okay. So there was one before Southland.
Right. It's
Okay.
called TF Express.
TFX. I don't remember that one at all.
Yeah. Well, it was a small LTL carrier, and
Okay.
but that relationship was not as strong, and
Yeah.
so we had a few differences in
Okay.
business philosophy and.
Now, when you and Cone were together, Steve Cone, y'all grew that business into a pretty thriving business.
Yeah, we went from no revenues up to when we sold the company in 2001. I think it had revenues of about $20 million.
Yeah. So
We had about 40 something office employees. We had over 100 drivers.
Oh wow.
It was.
So by any stretch, you had a success.
We had, trucking is not an easy industry to be in because
I can't imagine.
It's your margins for error are very slim. Decisions have to be really, really quick, and you're at the mercy of the fuel, diesel fuel, insurance.
Now,
All of those other kind of things.
did you guys operate with your own trucks or use independent truckers? How did that part work?
We started using independent truckers.
Okay.
Owner operators, we call
Sure.
them. And then over time, we started buying some of our own trucks.
Okay.
But we had a brokerage or a logistics company. We had an expedite company. We had our truckload company. So we were doing. We had a variety of things in the in transportation at the time.
Interesting. When you think about where you come from, and again, not to be disparaging at all. This is a life. This is a life that we've been given.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? And and you've taken coming up in Wayne County, Tennessee,
Right.
and been through the world, around the world, and come back home, near home, and actually home, and built a company. And how long did you guys, you and Steve, keep that company rolling?
17 years.
I was going to say that was a while.
Yeah, it was a while. As a matter of fact, even though I was heavily involved in our community and volunteering and all those other kind of things, I got involved in our trucking, and in the 90s, and most people don't know this, but I was president of a national trucking association, the Transportation Intermediaries Association, which was transportation brokers, expediters, fast forwarders, and all of those things. And we had about 700 to 800 members throughout the U.S. And I was president for 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I've even testified before Congress twice.
On behalf of the trucking industry.
On behalf of the trucking industry.
Well, you were
Yes.
neck deep in it. You grew up in it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you grew up in it from a young man, so you saw it and got your own education in the business.
That's right.
So I think that's and that's probably what made you good at it.
Well, that's I don't know how good I was in it. You know,
Well, you had to
finally-
be. You had to be good at it, or you wouldn't have made it like you did. But that's probably one of the best ways, really, is to have a mentor like you had to begin with, and then
And you just have to ask questions, and
Yeah.
you just you have to be curious about life.
yeah,
All kinds of things in life.
yeah, that's awesome. Now, were there other trucking companies here in?
Oh yeah, we had I guess my major competitor at the time would have been Sharp Transport.
Yeah,
But John Sharp, John and Becky, they were great people, and
Yeah.
so I mean, I didn't.
you
really
probably
call
had to
them-
work together too.
I didn't call them competitors, even though we went after the same freight and
Sure.
all those other kind of things.
Sure.
And then later on, Southeast Carriers got in the truckload business.
Yes.
And those, and they've been very successful in,
Oh, they
in
have.
trucking and warehousing and all that.
Yeah.
My hats off to
Yeah.
those guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've grown to be a major carrier, at least in our neck of the woods.
Right.
Sure have. So, after the trucking company, I got to know you, I guess, during those years.
Right.
somewhere-
Yeah. Probably. Yeah.
Somewhere
in there.
in there. That's when you and I remember crossing paths with you. First, I was a young man trying to start the real estate business, and so you, in my mind, were a successful local businessman, that I knew of. And so I'm like, well, this is somebody I need to know.
Unfortunately, you found out.
Yeah. So, and I have regretted it ever since.
I don't blame
I'm just
you.
kidding. I'm just kidding. But no, always been a friend. And so after the trucking company, though, you were a success at it. The company did well. But what made you decide to not do trucking anymore?
Well, in the last parts of trucking, it became work.
Yeah.
It became very, very hard work.
Yeah.
We fought cash flow constantly. We fought during the late 90s. Fuel, especially diesel fuel, become very volatile. I mean, so all of a sudden you go from fuel being 88 to 90 cents a gallon up to $1.60 a gallon, and you just cannot raise your rates enough to handle those things. Also, the insurance industry became, less risk averse. And so our cargo liability and those things started going up. Matter of fact, they doubled. They went from, being $200,000 or $300,000 a year up to about $500,000 to $600,000 a year.
Wow.
And so I'm thinking, I'm going to bed at night, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I don't, on Friday nights I'd go home and knowing that the guys had to fuel up on the weekends, and I'm thinking, okay, if I don't get a $250,000 deposit on Monday, I am in serious trouble because I'm exhausting my lines of credit. I'm going out on a lot of faith with those things, and it's just nip and tuck all the time, and I'm stressed.
So
And finally, it was at the time that I was the president of this trucking association, and here's what I call synchronicity or serendipity.
Okay.
I am giving my farewell speech at Disney World in Orlando, Florida, and getting ready to transition to another president. And I had my notes, and I was going to, give this hurrah speech and all that kind of stuff, motivation. And I had my little notes in my suit pocket, and I got up on the podium, and I reached in to get my notes, and something just says, put those things back in there and talk from the heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did that, and I told them, I said, we're struggling. Trucking is a great industry for us to be in. It's provided me a good life and all those things, but it's tough. And all of a sudden, there was about, maybe 600 people in the audience, and all of a sudden, I had this one thing that just says, and everyone in the audience seemed to be just taking a deep breath and said, I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
after my speech, and believe it or not, I got a standing ovation.
Yeah.
The president of Landstar Systems
Landstar. Okay.
in Jacksonville, Florida, came up to me afterwards and said, Robert, you've really done a good job the last 2 years in our industry, helping us. And would you have dinner with me tonight? I said, well, sure. I went to dinner with him, and he says, have you ever thought about selling your trucking company? And I'm sitting there. I said, selling it? I'm thinking about dumping that thing and, throw it in the ditch and get it over with, let me out of this rat trap. Well, fortunately for me, Landstar ended up buying our company. I basically gave it away. Steve and I basically gave it away. We made a little bit, but
yeah.
I was able to get out of the trucking business by the skin of my teeth.
And this is the only career you've ever known.
I've never known anything else. Now, I had dibbled and dabbled. I'd, bought a house and sold my house and all that. And,
yeah.
And I'd messed around with folks like Jerry Jones and Andy Duggar, and we'd go out and we might buy a few acres and play. And
so you were messing around with some real estate.
I was messing around with it a little bit, but not.
Which is where I'm headed. I'm headed to the real estate world.
Are we going there now?
I'm headed
close.
I'm headed to the real estate world with you. We got a few more minutes,
all right.
So because I remember, I think vaguely that was one of the reasons that I met you to start with. Of course, you was talking with Steve and our real estate company at Homefront.
Right.
And I thought you dabbled with the idea of buying Homefront.
I did buy it.
You did buy it. That's right.
I bought it from Steve.
That's right. You owned it for a short period of time.
I did.
I was there during
and that was even at a time where I was still in trucking, but Steve. He was a smooth talking little devil, and one of my best friends.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I ended up buying it, but I didn't know enough about it. I got my real estate license and those things, but I didn't want to be buying. I didn't want to be managing people. I didn't want to get back into business and doing all those kind of things. Yeah. So I think we ended up maybe Bob Counts bought it. Was it Bob Counts?
No, Counts was in there for a little bit. Hubert Hinkle bought it.
Hubert bought it.
Hinkle bought it.
Yeah, okay,
and
that's
at
right.
that time, I was the managing broker because he didn't have a broker.
He didn't have anything. I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was, but that was only about a 3 or 4 month span there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But needless to say,
the world kind of changed quickly there. For
it
a little
all
bit.
changed, and it was like, I don't really want to be back in business. I don't really want to be managing employees. I don't want to be doing any of those things.
Once you turned loose of all that, what'd you do with yourself?
Well, I spent about a year thinking about what I want to do. What is my passion?
Yeah.
And I always thought about the cultures of the world and how the whole world, there were so many different things going on, but people somehow managed to survive and were able to improve themselves through self-help and all those other kind of things. So I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe I ought to be a self-help coach.
Yeah.
Maybe I ought to do all that kind of stuff. So I thought about that for a while, and then I said, no.
That ain't it either.
That's not it.
Did you go to the Dale Carnegie thing?
Yeah. Oh, I even helped to.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I went through Dale Carnegie, and I also helped facilitate some of the Dale Carnegie courses.
Yeah.
Now, so, I mean, I've messed around with a bunch of junk.
You know, all this stuff.
But finally, I said, what I really love doing better than anything is I had rather ride the roads and look at beautiful nature and look at trees and look at water and
But you
and
can't
play
make a
around
living
with-
just looking at it.
Oh, I know it, but I just says that's what I want to do.
You
I,
can't make
I
a
wanna
living
be,
looking at it, Rob.
I want to be doing that. And then the next thing I know, it's like Dad had just retired from the telephone company. I said, Dad, you know what we ought to do? Why don't we buy us a piece of property and see if we can't clean it up a little bit and sell it? He said, son, I don't know anything about that. I said, well, I don't either.
Yeah.
But let's do it. So I grabbed my dad.
That was me.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. I grabbed my dad, and so we bought a little piece of property over on the Buffalo River.
Yeah.
Cleaned it up, and did okay with it.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, I'm buying another piece of property, and all of a sudden I'm just knee deep in property. And not only that, another story in the middle of all that while I was in trucking is I hired this little guy by the name of Blake Lay. Have you ever heard of that guy before?
I've heard of him.
Well, he went to work for me in the trucking. I bet you didn't even know that.
I did not know that. I didn't know you worked for
Blake
trucking.
worked with me at Southland Express for
didn't
a
know
year or
that.
so. While he was running, he got me to be his campaign manager when he ran for state senate.
Uh-huh.
Needless to say, that was a bad mistake on his part because he lost.
It didn't work.
It didn't work. But over time, we developed this great relationship and buying and selling land. And Blake ended up being a partner of mine with Trace Properties.
Trace Properties. That's right.
Yeah. So.
And you guys have bought and sold and usually buy undeveloped or
Unloved land's what I call it.
unloved land, and you kind of put some love on it, clean it up, and make it pretty.
That's
and
right.
then resell it.
That's exactly
And I've got
right.
to do some business with you over there,
Uh-huh.
here and there.
Yes.
You and Blake, and that's not why I really had you in here, but I wanted to get your story and how it all come to be, because you accomplished a lot. You've accomplished a lot, and it's still going.
Yeah, you know what? Like I say, I'm real blessed. I don't, now I'm not a perfect person. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and
we all do.
and there's things in my life. If I had it to do over with, I probably would have made different decisions.
Oh, sure.
But every decision you make takes you down a road that allows you to make other decisions. And I tell people this all the time. I said, you don't have to know the answers. You just have to know to ask the question.
That's right.
And
right.
if you continue to do those things, that over time, and you present yourself out of love, and I'm not big on trying to philosophize with some of this stuff, but you got to care about people.
Well, that is one of the main things, is to care about people and be genuine doing it.
Yeah.
If you genuinely try to help somebody, it'll come back for you.
Yeah. And have I always been the best person about caring for people and all those things? Absolutely not. I mean, like I said, I've made decisions that if I had it to do over with, I'd probably do differently.
Well,
but over time, you find that you still can develop, because we're all human and we're all trying to figure out a way.
Yeah.
To make things.
I mentioned early this morning about, of course, I'm in the real estate business. That's my real job. And, of course, you and I crossed paths there, and I've worked with you on a few deals here and there over the years. But I mentioned earlier this morning, talking about that business, is having resources and people resources. And you've been a resource for me. When I have a piece of property that I need to know about, I've called you, and I've said, hey, Robert, I want you to put your head on this. Tell me what you think about this. What could we do with this? What could be done with it? Well, what kind of value it may have? And you're a resource for that because of your experience.
Yeah.
And so, that's been a help to me. Been a help to me
thank you.
many times.
Yeah.
Many times. And then, of course, I won't mention the one piece of land that you and I went to look at that you ended up buying, I think, where they had done some bulldozer work on this hillside, and it had been raining. and I was in your vehicle with you driving, and I said, Robert, Robert, don't go down that hill because you're not going to be able to get back up it. Oh yeah, we'll get back up it. I said, no, I don't think we'll get back up it. It's going to be slick.
That was not a good. That was
Do
not.
you remember
a good,
this?
Oh, you dadgum right! I remember it.
So
we went down there. And
so you went down. You went down this hill. Me knowing all the time we ain't coming back up this hill. It ain't gonna happen. And I don't even know if we're gonna have cell service down here.
No.
Which
down on Johnson Road and on Clack Springs. in Loretta. Yeah,
that's right. So you went barreling off through there just like you thought you knew what you were doing.
Yeah,
and
I did. Thought I did.
You ended up buying that property.
I ended up buying the property, cleaned it up. Oh, it
was gorgeous.
It was just absolutely stunning when we got through with it.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful creek and bluff down
Yeah.
there. That bend in that creek is awesome.
Yeah.
I was back down there not too long ago and thought about that episode with me.
Did you?
And I thought, this is a hill that me and Robert got stuck on.
Thank goodness we had a dozer at the top of the hill
There was
that
a
was able to
dozer?
get a chain
That's right.
and Brett come in and pull us back
We
up.
called a buddy, and the keys happened to be in that dozer.
Yeah.
It didn't even belong to him, but the keys were in it. And he got on that dozer and come down there and got us out. I was determined not to get out of the truck in the mud, and I didn't.
You didn't.
I sat right there. I said, I'm
Well, you
sitting
know
right
what?
here.
Sometimes you have to have real gentlemen that clean up and look good. You know, I mean, that's how I keep my image up. Is I hang out with people. You know, it's got that good image.
Yeah,
these professionals.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Mr. Robert Pulley has been my guest today. We've still got a couple of minutes, and of course I will tell you that Trace Properties still active, still working.
Yes.
And you guys develop and market properties. Well, you buy them and then resell them all kinds. By the way, I've got some properties I need you to look at.
Well, you're talking in my good ear now.
That's right. The life and times of Robert Pulley. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So what you got on the what's the future look like for Robert Pulley at this point?
Well, right now I keep telling myself I want to slow down. Life has thrown a few curves at us over the past year or so, but we have purchased a 2,700 acre tract of ground over in Lewis County, just right at the confluence of the Lawrence, Wayne, and Lewis County lines.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to play with that for about a year and a half, and then maybe after that, take a little bit of time and maybe do some traveling, hang out down at the cabin and listen to the water, and who knows?
Who knows?
God, dog, who knows?
You won't be able to quit.
I'm not ever going to retire.
You won't be able to quit.
Yeah.
You won't. Well, that's good. Your cabin you talk about just over the Wayne County line, headed west out of Lawrenceburg. You've got an area there. Do you have any lots left around the lake over there?
Well, I might, but actually I've started trying to buy some of them back.
Have you really?
Yeah, so that I'm kind of.
See, there I go.
Yeah, I don't think I want to sell anything else.
That's all right. But you've got I don't think I've ever been to the cabin.
Oh, have you not?
I've not. I've threatened to. I've talked about. I've never made it down there.
Well, it's only about 1,400 square feet, so it's not. I mean, we're not talking about a Taj Mahal or anything like that.
No. But
it's. I got a spring. That I get my water from. I got a little creek and all that kind of stuff.
Me knowing where it is, I know where it is. But I've just never been there.
Well, you got an open invitation to come anytime.
But that's seclusion.
It is seclusion.
Yeah, you got to want to get there.
You do. You have to want to get there.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming in. I really, really do.
Well, Jeff, I've enjoyed it.
Just a few seconds left, and I really appreciate you coming in. We'll have you back again someday.
All right.
And,
sounds good.
And we'll go eat lunch at the fair here in a little while.
Oh, maybe we can do that too.
All right. God bless Robert. Thank you. Robert Pulley, my guest today. Everybody have a great rest of your day. We got a Fox News break coming right now.
No longer in North Korea. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News, the American soldier who fled to that country over the summer.